because I don't have all the answers, I still live in that not knowing horrible hell. I always will. I mean, I don't think I'll get the answer here on Earth. Yeah, it's better to know if they're alive or if they're deceased, for sure. Mine is such a gray area of knowing he's out there, but it's not really him, the person I know, so it's like, I don't even know how to answer that because it's still all unknown.
Imagine a spouse or partner walking out the door to never be heard from again. You don't know what happened. Are they the victim of a crime? Was there a medical emergency? And are they lying in a hospital somewhere, or perhaps worse, they abandon you? You feel panic. You are afraid you won't be there when you're needed the most. You are terrified that you'll never know what happened. I'm Jim Grinstead, and today we'll talk with a woman whose husband left their house, never to return.
So on May 19th, he was leaving to go to work, and I was remoting my position that I had that was here in Kansas City. I was remoting it, and so I was usually already up and at my computer when he would leave. He'd usually come in and give me a kiss goodbye, as I was working. But that day, for some reason, I don't even know why, I walked down with him and said goodbye to him at the front door. It was later that day, I don't remember exact time, around lunchtime, or what would have been his lunchtime. I got a call from his work, and they asked if my husband was there, and I said, no, isn't he there? They're like, he never came back from lunch.
That was Maureen Rinchez, and that was the day our story began. While she still doesn't have the details, the story effectively ended 4 years later, almost to the day, when she learned her husband wanted a divorce. But let's begin in the time before he left. He was a former Marine Master Sergeant. When he retired, he worked at the telephone carrier Sprint and later at Citibank. Both companies hit hard times and he was forced to leave. Later, when things improved for both companies, they both wanted him back. The couple was living in Kansas City at the time where Sprint was headquartered, but the decision was made to go back to Las Vegas.
So, you have two major corporations that are wanting you back. That's the caliber of person he was. So in 2004, when we moved back out to Las Vegas, we were pretty excited about it. We hated leaving our young adult children and one grandchild, but I think my husband's plan was he was going to convince them all to move out that way, eventually out to Vegas. So we bought a home out there. We still had our home in Kansas. We had bought the home in Vegas, and he was so excited about it. He laid every floor in there. He rebuilt the staircase. He thought the girls would walk down them as brides someday. We painted every inch of it. I mean, we had just really worked hard on this home. He was very excited because in 2 weeks, my sister and brother-in-law were coming out, and he's very close to them, and he was looking really forward to it. He was trying to get everything finished in the house, before they got there, type of thing.
Sure, there were stressors, but they were the kind of things designed to make your life better, happier. Then came May 19th, a Thursday. I've loved cooking since I was flipping burgers in high school. But life happens and there's no time for baking fresh scones for Sunday mornings or much of anything else I used to do. That's why I like Factor. They deliver chef-crafted and dietitian-approved fresh meals that are ready to eat in minutes. You can get 7 meals for a week. But if you're a weekend superstar, or like me, just craving fresh scones, a homemade pizza, or chili, Just order what you need. You pick your meals, and they change every week, so you can pick food that meets whatever diet you choose. If you want a high-protein meal, try the chicken Alfredo pasta with broccoli. If you want to keep the carb count low, order up the cheesy chicken and broccoli casserole. Factor offers you great fresh foods with plenty of options at affordable prices. Plus, you get the time back you would have spent cooking and use it to hang up on spam callers, double-checking your bank account to make sure no one's stealing your money. So let me put some money in your bank. Head to factormeals.com/scamsandcons50 and use code scamsandcons50 to get 50% off. Take a bite out of time and get fresh foods that give you more time for listening to podcasts. Head to factormeals.com/scamsandcons50 and use code scamsandcons50 to get 50% off. I've said it before in this series, and I'll continue repeating it. You don't have to wait 24 or 48 hours before contacting police to report a missing person. Once you suspect something's wrong, call right then. The chances of finding the person rise incredibly the sooner police can begin work, and that's because so many of the missing are children or have medical problems. Time makes a difference. Unfortunately, Maureen didn't know that, and she waited until the following Monday to file a police report.
I did wait a few days before making the report. Back in those days, everybody thought you had to wait 48 hours, which is a big lie. If you want to talk about a scam, that was the biggest scam there was. But I waited till Monday. I was kind of wanting to see, was he going to go back to work? I couldn't figure out what the heck was going on. He had had a drinking problem, but he had been sober 11 years. And he wasn't a everyday alcoholic. He was more of a binge drinker, and every now and then binge drinker. But, it had caused some problems, but he took care of it, My first thought was, oh no, he's gone down that path again. It was really rough that day when I finally realized he was missing and made a report. Well, it was that Monday I made the report. So many thoughts were going through my head. So many scenarios were going through my head. I had no idea what the heck was going on. That he didn't show back up at work. He's not a person to not show back up at work. We had a rental car. Our car had finally just bit the dust, and we had been driving a rental car simply because we were trying to get a loan for a pool. Sounds like a luxury, but when you live in the desert, it's a necessity. And it's a lot cheaper out there to get a pool than other places.
If you've ever lost a spouse or long-term partner, you understand how difficult it is to undo things that come with a partnership. Utility bills, magazine subscriptions, lots of things. One of the first things she had to do was stop budget rentals from continuing to remove money from their bank account to pay for a rental car.
I have never been put up against a company that was so cruel in my life. So I had called the budget rental to see, because I knew that day he did have errands to run. And I knew that he was going over to the rental car place to make a payment. He was kind of old-fashioned like that. He liked to go in and make his payments type of thing. And I got this very nervous young man on the phone. It was very odd, and he couldn't pull us up in the system. Now, I'm a database person, so I'm giving him every conceivable way of pulling up us in the system, and he couldn't find it. This is crazy. So meanwhile, I'm without a car. So this young gal's like, she says, oh, yeah, he was in here. He was mad. He was yelling at us. Isn't like my husband. I mean, he is the most non-confrontational man. And he was a master sergeant in the Marine Corps. He pretty much knows how to control himself, I mean, if he'd get mad, he would walk out the door muttering, but not ever being confrontational. So I thought that's really odd. And, well, where's the car? And they're like, well, we don't have the car. I said, well, there was a big sticker on it that said that it's monitored. I said, my husband and I felt really good that we'd be driving around in a car that was monitored. Can you not find it? And ends up, I guess that monitor was just, it wasn't being monitored. Yep, pretty much. So it got worse and worse with budget. I got their security on the phone, and because they kept pulling money out of our bank account, and I said, I don't even know where the car is. I said, you can't keep pulling money out. We have no idea where this car is. I said, my husband could very well be in the trunk of that car. And she said, well, then he's with the car. And that was her reasoning to keep pulling money out of. It was horrible. Of all the things, and I went through a lot through all of this, horrible people, that was the worst.
My name is Bill Huffman, and I am a former Cleveland news producer, and I am now the host of the podcast, Who Killed? I began the show focusing on the unsolved murder of Amy Mihalovic, and now each week I explore a different case with a focus on some of the victims who don't get the attention they deserve. I have a deep catalog of over 225 episodes, so there is a guarantee there will be something for you. Who Killed is an evergreen podcasts, killer podcasts, and slow burn media production. Subscribe today wherever you get your favorite shows.
This would not be the first time Maureen encountered people with no empathy. During the search for her husband, many scammers tried to take advantage of her. Scammers love to take advantage of the vulnerable, and we'll get to those stories in a bit. She was about to resolve the issue with budget when the car turned up.
It showed up in valet parking at a casino right down the street. Cars, and now at this point, this was August as this is all playing out. So we're talking from May to August. A car doesn't sit in valet parking in Vegas for that long. It's a high terrorist target there, and cars just don't sit around. I think possibly what happened was my husband, when he went in that day, and whatever he was upset about, I think he decided, he left the car there. I think he decided to either walk back home or try to walk to work, or there was a bus line right out front. He might have jumped on a bus.
Whatever the reason, Maureen now believes her husband's decision to leave was a spur-of-the-moment decision. It wasn't something he'd planned, but at the time she couldn't know that. So she set off across the country, planting flyers with his picture and other information, hoping someone would recognize him. She put them in campgrounds and bowling alleys because her husband loved to bowl and camp. The public often wasn't helpful. In addition to calling in false sightings, they would accuse Maureen of lying or attempting to scam money from strangers. It just added to her stress, but she noted she's tough and got past it. Her daughters struggled to ignore it. Eventually, however, her flyers paid off, and she got a call from California.
Was watching, obviously all his bank stuff, what have you. And I had seen a transaction come across at the casino there. So I had contacted either the sheriffs or local police, whatever up there. I think I contacted the security at that casino too. Because at that point, I thought it was somebody had taken my husband's IDs, using his stuff. So then it got really weird. One of the law enforcement agencies up there said that the camera was just too bad that they couldn't really tell who it was. Well, then my detective in Las Vegas, of course, I was keeping him in the loop, and he supposedly got a hold of the camera footage, and he said, oh, no, it's clear as a bell, it's him. I'm thinking, really? I said, okay, let me see it. I can tell if it's him or not. Denied. I was denied. You'll find this with many of the, especially adults that are missing. The families are denied things right and left that they should be able to see.
To this day, she doesn't know why she was not allowed to see the video, and she knows police need more training in how to deal with missing persons.
I think they're getting a little bit better at understanding what the families go through, but, really they get no training on the missing person themselves, and they get no training on how to handle the families. which causes a lot of problems, a lot of misunderstanding.
Then there was another caller, this one from Oklahoma.
It was not long after that we were contacted by an attorney in Bartlesville. The way he did it was very, very strange. I mean, I almost deleted the email because a few weeks before that I had a blackmailer come after me, telling me they knew where my husband was. And for $5,000, they would tell me. I saw that as a scam right away, and I turned it into the FBI. In fact, I even had a Canadian detective call me because his families were getting the same stuff. And I put it out on my websites and what have you, and one very high-profile case in California were just about ready to pay that guy until they saw my warnings not to pay. When this email came in from this lawyer, and it was almost like kind of the same thing, like, I know where your husband is, or I've talked to your husband. I'm like, yeah, right, buddy. Been there, done that. But I don't know, something stopped me, and so I got a hold of my daughters, and I said, hey, I'm going to send you guys an email. Look at this. What do you guys think? Well, they started doing some sleuthing, researching, and come to find out, he was actually using his mother's email. I think she was a judge in Oklahoma. They somehow got it down to finding out that it was this lawyer who had sent it.
Hello, this is Dr. Grande, the host of True Crime Psychology and Personality. On my podcast, I explore and explain the pathology behind some of the most horrendous crimes and those who commit them. We discuss topics like narcissism, psychopathy, sociopathy, and antisocial personality disorder from a scientifically informed perspective. What is a narcissist? How do you spot a sociopath? What signs can you look for to protect yourself from these dangerous personalities? It's not just about the stories, but also the science and psychology behind them. So if you're interested in true crime or mental health, I'd encourage you to give my show a listen wherever you get podcasts.
The lawyer got involved because Maureen's husband wanted a divorce, and he hoped it could be done by publication of the notice in a newspaper. In the distant past, some legal issues could be handled that way. One of the listings might include the person's name and say, I am not responsible for any debts other than my own. Today, these sorts of actions are rarely used, and such was the case in Oklahoma and both Missouri and Kansas, where Maureen had lived and worked. When it came time to go to court, she learned her attorney had withdrawn from the case and hadn't told her.
I had read, long time before this, how corrupt Bartlesville is, and I came face to face with it. I had decided to hire a lawyer outside of Bartlesville, but I get down there for one of the first hearings or whatever the hell it was, and by this time the young lawyer had left that firm. He didn't like what he was seeing there, and he had left that firm. So one of the partners in the firm had taken over, and when I see him, he had carried papers in supposedly from my lawyer, stating my lawyer was pulling himself from the case. I mean, why didn't my lawyer walk into the courthouse and do that, or even call me and say, I'm off the case? Right after that, one of those first hearings, I get a call from this woman lawyer, and she's like, I hear you need a lawyer, I'd like to take your case. I fell for it. I shouldn't have. I think she was set up by them too. So obviously we got really no answers.
A quick internet search will give ideas about just how many crimes happen in Bartlesville. It's a good place for a lawyer to make a living. It's also a good place for scammers to operate. Then the day finally came when Maureen would see her soon-to-be ex-husband in court.
When he walked up to us, my daughters and I were standing on a sidewalk in Bartlesville before going in for mediation. And my lawyer had called me and said, well, the girls need to go sit at, I don't know, some sub shop or something around the corner from that. And at that point, we still hadn't seen my husband. We still didn't know if it was actually him. And I had told her, I said, hell no. My girls have every right to see if this man is their father. And when he walked up to us, he was pointing at my daughters like, you're Johnny, you're Mary, you're Elisa, like memorized from a picture. I mean, he raised these kids. He was a participating parent. He knew his children, Just left me with a lot more questions on that one. It was crazy.
The hearing was part of a divorce arbitration to determine the division of property. Once again, Maureen was insulted.
At one point, he said something about, well, the baseball players' wives don't get this much money when they divorce. I threw my hand down so hard on the table, it startled everybody. And I said, did they look for their husband's bones? I wasn't even asking for money. I mean, there was no figure put out, It was like, I just wanted to see if it was my husband. That was it.
There was no other conversation with her former husband, and Maureen ended up moving to Arizona, where she had family, and it was as far as she could get with the money she had. After all of this, she knows she'll never know what happened, but she has a theory.
Actually, what I think was that he had stroked. Possibly he did get so mad at budget that he stroked. He was high risk for it. Before we had moved there, he had had a bypass on his leg, and the doctors had told me they had used a diseased vein for that because he didn't have a good vein in his body. A couple weeks before that, we had a little mountain in our neighborhood, and we were driving over it, and there was a lot of construction going on, so there was a huge construction turnout, and where the construction people were parking their cars and things, it was pretty big. Thankfully, it was pretty big. So we're going up the mountain, and all of a sudden, he veered off. Thankfully, there had been a little break. Now we hit into that construction parking area, and I looked at him, and I said, what happened? He kind of sat there for a second, longer than you would expect, and he said, the sun got in my eyes. And I said, no, it didn't. There's no sun. There was no sun coming that way at us. So I think he had had a mini stroke.
When she was in court, Maureen also saw that he had lost a leg, adding to her suspicions that he'd had a stroke. There's some people in the business of dealing with missing people who say those who leave voluntarily are maliciously missing. They leave others to clean up the remains of their life. Bank accounts, financial obligations, explaining to friends what happened, even if you don't know yourself. Maureen said she considered suing her ex-husband for the losses she suffered, but then decided that he had suffered too, and there was nothing to be gained. She also believes there's no such thing as a person who voluntarily decides to walk away from one life and begin again.
When someone goes missing, it's always mental health, physical health, something criminal has been done to them or by them, or it could be accidental, like a car off the road not being found type of thingy. But a sane, non-criminal does not vacate their life. That's just made up. Really, do you think anybody that is all together mentally and physically would do that to their family? I mean, why not leave a note at the very least, When we first discovered that my husband had surfaced, people were really mad. And, it was probably a knee-jerk action on my part, too. I think maybe for a week I kind of fell into it, and they called it the maliciously missing. And people were all over it and up in arms. As I processed it, I realized that's not what happened. That can't happen.
When I come back, I'll share some thoughts about this series and what I've learned.
It is estimated that approximately 40,000 unidentified human remains cases exist in the United States. These remains are often kept in the offices of medical examiners, coroners, or other allied professionals, but many are also buried or cremated. On any given day, 80 to 90,000 individuals are actively listed as missing persons with law enforcement. The sheer volume of missing and unidentified person cases in the United States poses a significant challenge to law enforcement, medical examiners, coroners, and family members searching to resolve these cases. The number of missing and unidentified person cases in the United States has been deemed our nation's silent mass disaster. The National Missing and Unidentified Person System, or NamUs, is the only national program that combines online case repositories that are accessible to all with case management, forensic analysis, and analytical resources to resolve cases.
NamUs is kind of a one-stop shop for missing and unidentified person cases. We all have pieces of the puzzle. Medical examiners have elements of these cases, we have elements, and families have elements. NamUs invites us all together in order to solve these cases.
For more information, visit www.namus.gov or contact NamUs toll-free at 1-855-626-7600. NamUs is funded by the National Institute of Justice and managed by the University of North Texas Health Science Center.
People do voluntarily go missing. Mental health may be a part of it. They find themselves in what seems to be an impossible situation and choose to vanish rather than commit suicide. Culture has an impact, as we learned in episode 1 of this series. Tens of thousands of Japanese vanish each year to avoid bringing shame upon themselves or their families. My conclusion is that if the person isn't a threat to themselves or others, we should respect their choice. Many will say they're being cruel to those they've left behind, that they went maliciously missing. But consider this. If you knew someone who was in unbearable pain, would you ask them to forego treatment because that treatment would be inconvenient for you? That would be a selfish and cruel thing to ask. Choosing to disappear will cause pain for others, but life is not without pain and disappointment, and each of us is guilty of causing pain or creating disappointment in others. In most cases, it's not intentional, but denying someone's choice to live their only life based on our expectations is intentional and wrong. If we believe decisions about our own lives are ours to make, we can't deny that same right to others. If you enjoy Scams and Cons, please give us a 5-star rating wherever you listen to podcasts. It helps people find us, and your ratings really make a difference. And don't forget to head over to our Facebook group, where I'll post more stories about scams, and you can chat with other fans. Just search Facebook for Scams and Cons, and be sure to select the group rather than the page. It's a private group to keep the bots out, so just ask to join and I'll take care of the rest. I look forward to hearing what you have to say. Thanks for listening.
Scams and Cons is a member of the Evergreen Podcast Network.
Hi, I'm Matt Harris. Seton Tucker and I host the podcast Impact of Influence, which for 2 years covered in depth Alec Murdaugh, who was eventually convicted in 2023 of murdering his wife Maggie and son Paul. That story continues to evolve, and we will cover that. Plus, we will tell you stories of other true crime events that have happened in the South. Please join us on Impact of Influence. And give us a follow on the Impact of Influence Facebook page.